who is seeking re-election. You might incorrectly think I was describing Taiwan. I am talking about what a lot of conservative Republicans think about our experience in 2012. You, who are looking for allies in common cause with your ideology, your pursuit of freedom, might want to more diligently help those in America who are already predisposed to accept the notion that this isn't crazy, this is real. It's real in America and it's real in Taiwan. You might build a stronger audience. My humble review has been that for far too long, people have struggled for power by focusing on Washington. Washington is a swamp. It is a small piece of land. Yes, it's important. Yes, there is power there. But if you look out over the rest of the country, there are many more of us than there are of them. When we show that we have numbers, when we show that we can affect their elections, those people in the swamp will always listen to what you have to say. When you cannot show that you have numbers and that you cannot affect their elections, you do not exist to them. And it is a painful truth. So, what do you need to do? You don't need to have a giant conference in Washington, although it is good to go to Washington and talk to people there from time to time. What you need is organization and strength outside of Washington. Rebuilding the fundamental support for a pro-freedom, pro-democracy, pro-Taiwan, tough on Communist Party China policy towards East Asia. Well, this is something all of you probably have known for a long time, so I'm not really telling you something new. Most Americans and the network of people we talk to across the country have not been organized this way. We have lived under a notion the Cold War is over. And since the Cold War is over, and we have now had a decade where people were very unhappy and frustrated with wars overseas, we have a political system that wants to avoid risk, wants to avoid intervention, and basically wants everyone else to take care of their own problems. This can't help Taiwan. It's happening at a time when you have a president who seems not to really want any help from the outside anyway. And so in the United States, people say, I can't be more Catholic than the Pope. If the people in Taiwan elect someone who doesn't really seem to want our intervention, our support, why should I take the risk in my political system from business interests, from media interests and others when it comes to China policy if the people in Taiwan don't seem to be sharing the same struggle? Who's my ally? How can we win? They ask these very tough questions. I believe there are answers, and we will get there. First, I think at this point, we are at the stage of having, once again, to destroy falsehoods. I begin back at the beginning of my remarks. I'll turn to some questions and answers to continue the conversation more directly with your interests. First, fantasy and falsehood. When I was a young man, I was sent to Taiwan. My professor at the time said, how lucky you are. You get to go to the real China. I thought, well, this is interesting. I thought I was going to Taiwan. Because Taiwan is the real China. So if I was an ordinary American, and ordinary Americans don't understand what the Republic of China is. They only know that there's China and there's Taiwan. This is what we need to get people back to. But I listened to my distinguished professor. You're going to the Republic of China. It's where culture has been preserved. It is where language has been preserved. You will learn the national language of all of China. And how blessed you are that you're not going to the People's Republic of China with its simplified characters and its communist system. You're going to free China. Well, never in that orientation was I made aware that only months before I arrived in Taiwan, martial law was still in place. that is not what ordinary Americans would consider to be free. And so I was going to some place that was neither free nor China, but my professor told me it's the real China. Well, because I am a very sarcastic person, I have continued through the rest of my life to continue this search for the real China. At Taiwan, I first went to Zhanghua, and I had a very cold couple of months in November. It was in Zhanghua that Jiang Jingguo died, and the police ordered all foreigners to stay indoors because the Taiwanese might have protests. There might be social disorder, and so we should stay inside, be safe. Well, there were no social disorders, no risks to us, but it was an important end of an era. From there, I was sent to Taidong, and in Taidong, I went up into the mountainside, countryside of the mountains. I met many, many people who did not look like real Chinese people. And I did not know why I was meeting so many of these not real Chinese people. But I went to many, many villages, and there were people from the Ame tribe and other tribes. I thought, my goodness, you don't look Chinese? But when you speak Mandarin, it's very clear to me, because I don't speak clear Mandarin, you speak clear Mandarin, no Taiwanese accent. I love talking to the Aboriginal people. It helped me learn at the time. But the one thing I could tell from the very beginning was that in our universities, in our orientation, in our government, they used these labels to describe entire geographies that were verifiably false. I was only 19 years old, but at that time I knew a greater truth than Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger ever could. That there was something on this island that wasn't in real China. It was more than that. Now, at that time, also in my journey, I had to report to the police every town that I went to. I had to carry around the Juliu Zheng. It was a little mini passport. And the police would make us give photographs so they could laugh at the goofy Americans. At the time, I had very curly hair and big glasses, so they laughed at my pictures a lot. But when I went to Taidong, the policeman said, "Welcome to Taidong. Do you speak Japanese?" I looked at my colleague, but I have never been mistaken for a Japanese person before. And it's like, I'm very confused. I asked, why? He says, well, the last one of you guys that was in town was from Japan. He was teaching me Japanese. I'm from Taipei. I don't speak Taiwanese. And most of the people in my jurisdiction only speak an Aboriginal dialect or Taiwanese or Japanese. And so, as a policeman, I am trying to learn Japanese. I would like it if you could help me continue studying Japanese. So, well, I'm very sorry. I can't help with that. But again, it was another piece of evidence that I wasn't in the real China. And that this wasn't free China and sort of the glorious 5,000 years of China. I was in a very different place. From there, I went to Tainan County, the town of Xining, and I would ride my bicycle through the countryside to a smaller town known as Madou. And some of you may know of Madou. It's a big town, no, joking. It was a wonderful place. But that was the first place I went where people began to tell me stories about their family having had large plots of land for hundreds of years that were stolen from them. I thought, what is this? This sounds like a TV cartoon. This can't be real. This person must be crazy. And I'd go to another person, I'd say, my brother disappeared 30 years ago. I've never seen him again. Meet another person, they say, I'm very happy you've learned Mandarin, but I refuse to speak to you in Mandarin. I will speak to you in English only. Like, what is this town? This is not the real China. And I began, piece by piece by piece, to learn a history that had not been told in America. that had not really been told that much in Taiwan. This is only a few months after the end of martial law. People still were very uneasy about speaking openly, and speaking openly with a random white guy who could talk to anybody after visiting their house, and who has to report to the police on a regular basis everywhere he went. But it was a beautiful blessing for me to just have my eyes opened a little bit. Now, I've already gone on long, but I want to take this just one step. After my time in Taiwan, I went to work in the government, and when I left my first government job, I finally had my civil liberties restored, and I was able to travel to the People's Republic of China. At that time, I thought, well, at last, I'm going to go to the real China, because I know Taiwan was not the real China. And so now, I'll be able to go to the mainland and visit some different cities, explore some history, try to get to know some people, even though I knew that that would not be easy, and it certainly wouldn't be like my experience in Taiwan. Well, what I quickly came to appreciate, I firmly believe, is that the People's Republic of China is not real China either. And most people in China know it. They don't dare say it. They don't organize themselves in large enough numbers to change it. But they know it. They know that the Communist Party of China is not Chinese, any more than the KMT is Taiwanese. They know that this is a foreign ideology, a foreign party that has power. But they're pragmatic in a way that will have to change at some point. Say, well, they have power. I don't have enough power. I don't have enough allies. Back to the challenges my grandfather would pose about what can you do about it? What are you going to do about it? So in my travels in northeastern China, far west China, central China, southern China, most people know that they are not in, that the current government is not the real China. That there is something that it's going to have to become. And I believe that that transition is sooner rather than later. Now, I say soon in the perspective of the Almighty. I don't know that it's tomorrow or 100 years from now. But what I do know for sure, it is not humanly possible for the CCP to hold on to power forever. That Chinese people have more self-respect than that. And ultimately, when they find out how, they will have more power than to allow that to happen. And I think that is what China's top leaders fear most of all. What does that have to do with you and me in Taiwan? It has everything to do with us. The main roadblock to getting Americans back to speaking English about American policy is the false belief that the People's Republic of China is China. That Taiwan is a part of that China. That it's kind of achieved a miracle. Political control with a marginally free economy. It's rich and powerful. To the outside world, it's stable. It's growing at high rates. They've achieved it all. And it's going to last forever. That's what our establishment elites sell. If you go to major think tanks in Washington, you will hear things like that. If you go to major universities in the United States, you will have professors giving lectures like that. If you read most major media editorial pages, they will be informed by ideas like this. It is not true. Another absolute fantasy and falsehood that we have to combat is the notion of a status quo. These two words I hate even more than one China, because it defies human nature. There is nothing in our nature that respects or maintains a status quo. Our bodies are constantly changing. Time constantly moves. It never stands still. It does not go backwards. Everything about the human experience is progressive, not